According to Christian TikTok, if you own a Hatch sound machine, congratulations, you've accidentally opened up a portal to hell.
Hatch is demonic. If you have a Hatch, you need to throw it away right now. 2 nights ago, my son's bassinet right next to me, okay? The Hatch sound is on. I start hearing murmuring. I rebuked it in Jesus' name.
Recently, my Hatch machine decided that it had a mind of its own and literally was shutting itself on and off whenever it wanted to, changing the sound, and I had no control over it. Many different people have come out saying that they have heard voices in their Hatch sound machines whenever they are trying to go to sleep, or they hear it in their kids' rooms as they're watching on the baby monitor. I am simply trying to expose the truth, which is that Satan is the ruler of this world.
And Christian Talk was so convinced the Hatch sound machine was satanic, they started throwing them in the trash. They're expensive! If I'd have spent that much money on anything and came to find out I was possessed, I just accept having a demonic roommate. So here's the question. What made these parents conclude that the random radio feedback they've been hearing for months suddenly meant their baby's sound machine was a gateway to hell? Well, October happened, and Hatch came out with this spooky commercial.
When I doom scroll, I guess I look for something to make me feel better. More than 3 days. Psychosis.
Just need to sleep, Ava.
It won't stop until it gets what it wants. Me? I sleep.
Just a reminder, this came out during October, the 1 month out of the year where companies do spooky things on purpose. And once Christian Talk logged onto Hatch, it immediately noticed that Hatch had also done a Twilight theme promo, just some basic hua.
It's here, the season where we dabble in the dark arts, set the right light vibes, dress like a small Victorian child for bed, and regulate our circadian rhythm with restorative phone-free sleep. Hallelujah.
There were no pentagrams, no Latin chanting, they weren't sacrificing goats over Twilight books. It was just 34 seconds of spooky ads combined, and somehow that was enough to make people reinterpret random radio static as satanic whispers and got Hatch trending on Demon Talk. This wasn't even the first time this year that Christians lost their collective shit over something being supposedly demonic, because back in June, Christians went after the evilest of evil things. A baby song.
So one day I'm in the car with my husband and she starts to cry and I'm like, oh my gosh, play the happy song. It works every time. So he's like, okay. He looks at the happy song and it starts to play and he's like, this is the weirdest song ever. I'm like, I know, but it works. About halfway through the song, he goes, I don't like this song. And he clicks on the artist and his face was like, Ashlyn. And that man has discernment because I never thought to even check the artist. Terrible mom mistake. This is what she looked like. You can look her up and see some of the songs that she sings, and in my opinion, they're demonic.
It must be exhausting living like this, to think you're being spiritually deceived by a jingle. Imogen Heap has been making dreamy experimental pop for over 20 years. She is an artiste, not a demon. And the real reason babies seem mesmerized by the song is because it was literally engineered for babies. In 2016, a UK baby brand called Cow & Gate hired an ad agency to create a song scientifically engineered for babies. The agency partnered with Imogen Heap and child development specialists to figure out what sounds babies like. They tested pitch, rhythm, and speech patterns, and then created a song based on their findings. And that became the Happy Song, which is adorable and makes way more sense than the devil personally produced a toddler hit. And just to be clear, this whole everything is demonic reflex didn't start on TikTok. Christians have been speedrunning through satanic panics for decades. In the 1980s, Christian groups claimed that Dungeons & Dragons led to Satanism, demonic possession, and even teen suicide, despite zero evidence ever supporting that. And it didn't help that in 1982, a made-for-TV movie called Maces and Monsters had Tom Hanks playing a teenager driven to madness by a fantasy game clearly meant to be Dungeons & Dragons.
What am I doing here?
And then there was backmasking, a real recording technique that Christian groups became convinced was being used to hide satanic messages that you could only hear when playing the song backwards. People thought if you reversed Stairway to Heaven, it would whisper, "Here's to my sweet Satan." If Satan communicates exclusively through backwards vinyl, he's the worst villain in history.
What am I doing here?
Look, having satanic panic over a sound machine or a tabletop game, it's a little funny, but when that satanic panic paranoia escalates, it can have real world consequences. Okay, can I be cheesy for a second? I just want to say to all the ghouls and gays who showed my last video love, thank you so much. Thank you for your kindness and for your patience. Patience, because I know it took me forever to respond to people. The reason for this is because right after I posted the video, I got like violently sick, like fever, bedbound, like fighting for my life. And so I couldn't respond to anyone's comments, but I read each and every one of them. So I was like half dead, but reading each and every one of them. And it honestly got me through. So thank you so much.
What am I doing here?
If you keep calling anything that you don't like or don't understand demonic, suddenly you never have to be accountable for anything that you do because you can just claim the other person is demonic and you're just a little baby question. That exact reflex is how multiple churches managed to feel morally correct while saying no to feeding a starving baby. Let me explain. Back in November, a TikToker named Natalie Monroe contacted several religious organizations nationwide, pretending to be a mother whose infant hadn't eaten since the night before. She asked for 1 can of baby formula, not money, and played a recording of a baby crying in the background to make it feel more real.
I'm calling your their church to test to see if they would help feed a starving baby. And right now I'm calling the First Nazareth Baptist Church. Hi, yes. I was calling to see if y'all could help with formula at all. I have a 2-month-old baby and we've been out since last night. And then I've been calling everywhere today and nobody can help me.
The experiment was meant to show how religious organizations respond when someone urgently needs help. The final results were rough. Out of the 42 organizations she called, only 9 offered to help her. And just as a side note, I want to make something really clear. This video isn't about just shitting on all Christians. There are obviously plenty of Christians that are good people. I grew up in a conservative Christian home and I was a devoted Christian and I was a good person. Okay, I had discernment. All right, I'm sorry, that's just not fair. It's just not fair. I definitely was that. Anyway, the point is, Christians are not a monolith. There are plenty of people that are Christian who are also good people. Just look at this grandpa from a church in Kentucky.
We can do this. I'll just see. Tell me what it is it's called in case I have to go get it because I'm a great grandpa. I'm not used to picking up phone. Okay. What's it called?
Good start.
Good start. And
Sir. Sir.
And it's for infants.
Yes, sir.
Infants formulas, any flavor, anything to it, or just...
He thought there were flavors. He doesn't even know that baby formula doesn't come in flavors. Other organizations that stepped up were a historically black church, a Buddhist temple, an Islamic center where the person was practically out the door before Nikali was even done asking for it. It was the sweetest thing ever. Guess who didn't step up? Mega churches.
God is good, but I'm dirt. I'm less than dirt. I'm pond scum. I'm dirt.
Get this baby out of the way. So after these churches failed the Don't Let a Baby Starve challenge, surely their first response was to sit with that failure and reflect with humility and prayer on how they can better embody the story of the Good Samaritan, which we can find in the book of Luke.
I don't apologize to the devil. Sometimes Christians get so weak, you forgot we're supposed to rebuke evil. So if you could pretend to have a crying baby, to try to call churches and to trick people into things. Now, let me tell you something about living faith. We fed thousands of people. And it's just the spirit of a witch. It's a witch. And my Bible says he do not allow that thing to live.
Spirit of a witch. I would be so honored if someone described me that way. And to be fair, not every response was that special. But I did notice 2 reoccurring excuses that kept popping up. Excuse number 1, churches can't just help random people in crisis. They might get scammed. Excuse number 2, well, the whole thing is invalid actually because it was spiritually deceptive and frankly, demonic. Because nothing says Christ-like compassion like requiring background checks for a can of Simula. When fear becomes the filter for every decision you make, protecting yourself feels holy, and letting one hungry baby slip through the cracks feels safer than the possibility of being fooled. Let's put that logic to the test though. Imagine 4 people come asking for baby formula, and we know for a fact that one of them is a lying scammer. But you also know for a fact that the other 3 are real parents with starving babies, but you don't know which is which. So what do? Do you refuse everyone so you're guaranteed not to get scammed? Or do you help all 4, accepting that one person will take advantage, but 3 real babies are guaranteed to eat tonight? I'll let you sit with that one. Now, if calling one woman demonic is enough to shut down self-reflection, what happens when an entire worldview is labeled satanic? Well, there's a best-selling Christian book that does exactly that. It's called Toxic Empathy by Ali Stuckey. Did I get that right? Great. Didn't try that hard because I don't like her. According to Ali Stuckey, toxic empathy isn't just misguided, it's literally satanic. Yes, toxic empathy is satanic. It is a tool of the deceiver to convince women that biblical love means affirming someone's sin. So what does she mean by toxic empathy? According to Ali Stuckey, regular empathy is just putting yourself in other people's shoes. But she insists that regular empathy turns toxic when it's used to deceive and guilt trip you into supporting evil things you shouldn't be supporting. Evil things like social justice. So for Stuckey, helping a single mom who's hurting, empathy. But helping to address the system that hurt that single mom, communism. The other thing Stuckey does is separate empathy from love. According to her, empathy is just a human emotion that can be used to deceive you. And love is completely separate from empathy and is inextricably linked to truth, which, conveniently for her, is whatever she believes is true. So in Stuckey's worldview, hurting someone can still count as love, so long as she believes she's correcting their sin. And that's how you get groups of Christians who can ignore people's suffering or even cause people to suffer and still walk away feeling morally superior because they did it out of love. And the thing is, this isn't an obscure belief held by a few aunts on Facebook. Stuckey's a best-selling author, a major Christian influencer, and part of a very large media ecosystem. So when someone with that level of reach teaches that empathy can be toxic or even satanic, it gives a huge chunk of Christians permission to feel victimized and morally righteous even when they're causing harm. And that's the exact dynamic playing out right now on a college campus in Oklahoma. Wakala. Recently, a junior at the University of Oklahoma called Samantha Fulnecky turned in a reaction paper for a lower division psychology class. The assignment was very simple. Read a research research article that focused on gender typicality and mental health, and write a 650-word paper that ties back to that article. Samantha turned in the paper, and out of the 25 possible points, she got 0. She emailed the professor asking her to reconsider the grade, but the professor stood by the original assessment. She also made it clear to Samantha that she didn't get penalized for her personal beliefs, but because her paper didn't answer the questions for the assignment, contradicted itself, heavily used personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and was at times offensive, especially when she called a minoritized group of people demonic.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
There's the satanic panic we all know and love. She encouraged Samantha to apply more perspective and empathy in her analysis. The professor also had a second independent instructor review the paper, and that person also gave her 0. Now, instead of Samantha stopping to think, okay, 2 separate people have reviewed my paper and both have said it's bad, maybe my paper was bad, she immediately framed the 0 as religious discrimination and escalated the issue to the university president, the governor of Oklahoma, Turning Point USA, and conservative media. In response, Oklahoma University placed the graduate instructor on administrative leave, replaced her with another professor for the remainder of the semester, and reassured Samantha that the grade she got on her paper wouldn't affect her grade in the class. Now, before we go any further, I've got to ask, was her paper really that bad? Or was Samantha really the victim of religious discrimination? Let's take a look at the article she was supposed to have read, the prompt she was given, and the essays Samantha actually turned in and see for ourselves. Or are you wondering if a pettiness actually drove me to read a 20-page peer-reviewed psychology article? You bet your ass it did. In the interest of keeping this video under 5 hours, I'm just going to focus on 3 things. What the study wanted to find, how the researchers went about finding it, and what they actually concluded. What they wanted to find. The researchers wanted to know 3 simple things. Do kids who act more typical for their gender get treated better by their peers? So for example, does a girl who dresses more girly get treated better? Number 2, do kids who feel less typical get teased more? So for example, does the girl who dresses less girly get teased more? And thirdly, does that teasing explain why those kids may sometimes have worse mental health outcomes? So for example, does getting teased for not being girly impact that girl's mental health? Just very normal questions about child development. How they studied it. So the article looks at data from a study in 2013 that looked at 84 middle school students, 34 boys and 50 girls. We're asked questions about their gender expression, whether they got teased for it, how popular they were, and their mental health. What they found. The results were very normal, very boring, very not demonic. Based on the data, they were able to conclude 3 main things. Firstly, kids who felt more gender typical tended to be seen as more popular. Secondly, kids who felt less typical tended to get teased more. Thirdly, especially for boys, being less typical predicted worse mental health. So for example, the girl who got teased for not being girly enough tended to have worse mental health because of the teasing. And because of this, the article recommends that adults should encourage kids to be more accepting of different gender expressions. That way, the heterosexual Christian girl who just so happens to like football more than painting her nails could just exist in peace. And that's it. No queer agenda, nothing about trans kids. Just the idea that basic empathy amongst middle schoolers would be a good idea. Okay, now that we know what Samantha was supposed to have read, let's just really quick look at the rubric and see what she was supposed to do in her paper. The prompt was really simple. There were only 3 grading criteria. There needs to be a clear tie to the article, 10 points. For 10 more points, a clear reaction to the content. Essentially, does the paper provide some sort of reaction to what was actually said in the article? And for 5 points, clarity of the writing. Is it basic college level writing? So keep these basic things in mind as we read Samantha's essay. This article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. Cool, so it didn't even name the article. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. Doesn't think teasing is a problem. Got it. Gender roles and tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. There's nothing inherently wrong with a stereotype. Next page. It is perfectly normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes because that is how God made us. Wait, I thought gender roles shouldn't be considered stereotypes. He created us with such intentionally. He created us with such intentionally. Did she write intentionally? He created us with such intentionally. Oh, nope, she wrote that. He created us with such intentionally and care, and he made women in his image of being a helper and the image of his beauty. If leaning into that role means I'm following gender stereotypes, then I am happy to be following a stereotype that aligns with the gifts and abilities God gave me as a woman. I thought you said gender shouldn't be considered stereotypes, but then it's perfectly normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes, but then if it's the roles, okay. I do not think men and women are pressured to be more masculine or feminine. I strongly disagree with the idea from the article that encouraging acceptance of diverse gender expressions could improve students' confidence. Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be whatever they want to be is demonic and severely harms American youth. I do not want kids to be teased or bullied in school. However, I thought you said it's fine to get teased. However, pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth and everyone can do whatever they want and be whoever they want is not biblical whatsoever. So she didn't mention the name of the article, she didn't mention the 84 students who were used in the survey, and barely mentioning anything the article actually concluded. Okay, can we go on a quick tangent real quick? Not that kind of tangent. Okay, Samantha, look at me. Look at me right here. Different ways of expressing masculinity and femininity already exist in Christian churches. People aren't turned out like identical little clones. When I was a middle schooler deeply involved in my church's youth group, I saw all kinds of gender stereotypes there. Sure, we had the muscular, athletic, outspoken guy, and the cardigan wearing, soft-spoken cookie baking girl. But we also had the skater girls, the soft-spoken, very unathletic, artistic guys, and that one hoodie and sweatpants girl who always seemed to be coming from soccer practice. None of that was controversial. This article doesn't argue for a queer agenda. It simply suggests that people who act or look differently shouldn't be mocked for it. That's it. Basic empathy. Now let's talk about what actually happened as a result of all this. Samantha received praise. She was platformed by conservative media. She received public support from the governor. And as of today, she's already had at least one public speaking engagement. Meanwhile, her professor, who had received an outstanding graduate teaching award just weeks earlier, was placed on administrative leave and will not be teaching that class for the rest of the semester. Quick update, because some new information came out after I recorded the video. On December 22nd, the University of Oklahoma announced that it had concluded its investigation and that it was deciding to fire the professor. Then on December 30th, the professor's attorney released a statement confirming that an appeal had been filed. And one of the things I mentioned is that new evidence undermines the university's conclusion. So what's the new evidence? It's an interview with Samantha where she explains in her own words how she completed the assignment.
Was it hard for you to come up with the things that you wanted to say?
Not at all. I was actually just telling this story earlier. I was at my my good friend. I was at her house, and we were about to go to a musical that OU was putting on, or a play. And I was like, oh, I have to do this assignment really quick. It'll just take a second. And then I read the topic, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be so easy. Like, you know, I have a very strong opinion on this topic. And then I wrote it in maybe like 30 minutes. It was really easy for me to come up with things to say.
Like I said, I read the article and it took me 30 minutes to read it thoroughly and take notes. There is no way she read the article and wrote that stream of consciousness bullshit in 30 minutes. She didn't read it. So someone was fired. Their overall career might potentially be completely derailed. And this bitch,
be nice. I'm finding
she didn't.
It take you that long to find it?
This dumbass didn't even do the fucking assignment. Okay, now you can go back to the video. What you're about to see is footage that was taken while the professor was still on administrative leave before she was fired, but it's still relevant because, as you'll see from the footage, getting the professor fired was a completely acceptable outcome for Samantha. And when Samantha was asked about this, she showed no real concern.
I do think they're doing the right thing by putting the TA on administrative leave. If you can't, do your job right in any setting, you get fired. So I think it's, justified.
Cool, so zero empathy for potentially ruining your professor's career. Got it. Okay, Samantha, can you at least explain what you meant when you called an entire marginalized community demonic?
The Bible says that God created male and female, and anything that's not from God or glorifying to God is glorifying to the enemy. What I meant by that, the demonic thing, is that I didn't mean for that to be offensive, but the truth will naturally offend people.
Oh my god, I don't know how I missed that. She didn't mean to offend anyone when she said that anyone that disagrees with her is demonic. That fixes everything. All jokes aside, intent doesn't erase impact. And that's really the core issue here. When you believe anything outside your worldview is demonic, empathy becomes optional and harm becomes justifiable. Ultimately, satanic panic doesn't just affect how people talk about sound machines or board games. It can be used to excuse cruelty, dodge accountability, and ignore real harm. Okay, can I just interrupt the video real quick? Can we at the very least agree that thinking that your Hatch sound machine is demonic is really rather silly?
I am hanging by a thread.